all of the reserves that we have are dwindling really fast. Well, Mona, how much money do we need to raise? And she's like, it's not money. We need crypto to be able to buy this, right? Like we need USDC. How much do we need? She goes, I'm doing the math at the current rate, $50 million by midnight tonight, 11 o'clock in the morning. Okay. And Ivan's like, okay, are we sure? She does the math again. She's like, honestly, the rate that this token is growing and the demand that we're seeing, $100 million. We have to find $100 million by when? Midnight tonight.
Hey everybody, it's Eddie from Tokyo. This is your cryptocurrency update from Japan, and that was Keith Grossman, the president of MoonPay, who pasted this clip on his LinkedIn. Ripple, through making a phone call to Brad Garlinghouse and Novogratz, bailed MoonPay out of a financial bind tied to the launch of the Trump meme coin. Who would have guessed that? So loans played a role in helping MoonPay handle the demand for that token. The liquidity needed was well over 150 million, and Ripple made up 60 million of that. All loans were paid in full after the long holiday weekend, proving yet again that banks are not up to the same level of service as a solution, for example, as Bitcoin, which was ultimately used when they were closed. We'll listen to the remainder of that clip in this video, but allow me to very, very quickly cover some updates that you should know about, including what David Schwartz says, in his own words, of what happened to the ledger when it stopped about a week ago. And we've got some scoop from Japan. Yes, it is maybe going to happen. I hope so, that the taxes are going to be reduced for crypto. In some of the tax brackets, it's over 50%. If you believe that, I am telling you the truth. And a new green light for crypto ETFs. But what's very interesting is the Financial Service Agency is considering imposing disclosure restrictions. That would be on virtual currencies similar to securities that exist in the traditional markets for buyer protection. The big financial conglomerate called SBI Holdings here in Japan, they're the largest outside shareholder of Ripple, have been for years an advocate of the digital asset XRP. They released their financial results just a few days ago, and I want to point out a note on page 46 to be precise. They believe, now this is their belief, that the value of the XRP that's effectively held by Ripple will not be reflected in the company's corporate value until a clear valuation is established through an IPO or other means. Now, what could other means be? Well, it could be a merger, could be an acquisition. So it's interesting. You sometimes hear people throw out ballpark valuations of the company when they're talking about Ripple shares, and sometimes you'll have people throw the value of escrow into the valuation of the company Ripple. But according to SBI, they don't think through the global financial standards of reporting that is going to take place. So that's just something to think about and something to know, especially when you hear people who are talking about the valuation of the company Ripple, because a lot of people hold the shares, and having that valuation is quite important as to what an IPO, if they do IPO, would go out at. And so, I understand the interest, but just be aware that this is the position and belief of SBI. Okay, I'm going to give you a warning. This may trigger you. It really shouldn't, but it's breaking news. You always want to do your own research. The USD Tether has this now new slogan, anywhere and now everywhere. And the reason why is because until now, most cross-chain solutions for USDT, the stablecoin, the largest stablecoin by market cap, were based on third-party unofficial bridges, leading to liquidity fragmentation. You can imagine just like Ripple's going to have maybe the XRP Ledger and Ethereum to start, but they're going to actually launch the RLUSD on other chains. Well, if those other chains don't talk to each other and you can't swap back and forth, the liquidity becomes fragmented, becomes in a silo. And that's also complex in terms of managing the digital asset across various blockchains. But through Arbitrum, they are going to power USDT seamlessly and interoperably through many different blockchains. So this is a big deal, and it could translate someday into the same service that it might bring to the RLUSD. So I know it gets low engagement. Somebody said, "Oh, Eddie, your your Twitter is, or my X is like a ghost town," and they put a remark at the bottom of this particular post, and it's because nobody wants to believe that USD Tether is going to be sticking around for a while, and especially if you don't know the person who actually has seen with his own eyes that the assets are there that back this up, is part of now the Trump administration. He's the Secretary of Commerce. Here are the chains that are going to be first linked together and be interoperable. The U.S. Senate committee on Wednesday did advance President Trump's pick, Howard Lutnick, the billionaire chairman and CEO of Wall Street firm Cantor Fitzgerald, to run the Commerce Department. And keeping it moving, the Chinese internet company owners of TikTok, that would be ByteDance, wow, they have introduced Goku, an advanced AI for high-quality video generation. You can do it text to video and image to video. The synthesis is running on high-performance GPU machines. This is a major leap forward. And now a portion of the explanation for the reason why the XRP Ledger experienced a temporary outage and restored itself after a 64-minute halt just about 7 days ago. David Schwartz jumped into this live space and he explained it. It's his preliminary analysis, but it's an incredibly weird edge case based on a decade-old design flaw. So have a listen, and then following this clip will be the final clip of Brad Garlinghouse coming to the rescue, the White Knight, for the Trump meme coin. All right, everybody, do take care. Sayonara for now. Bye-bye.
So it looks like this is preliminary, and I'm not really committed to this. This is my analysis that not so any other people agree with, but I think we're pretty much close to understanding what happened. Basically, it's a design flaw that's about a decade old. Effectively, what happens is if you think about the XRP Ledger as sort of like an emergent state, like each Bitcoin node has a state, but also sort of the Bitcoin network as a whole has a state. Like if a miner finds a block and it's in the process of being relayed, you can think of the network as a whole of having a state where a block's been found, but it hasn't been relayed to everyone yet. And so there's sort of like an emergent system level state that comes from every node. Every node knows its own state and makes its own local decisions. And as humans, we sort of understand that by speaking about the network as a whole as having an emergent state. And so when we say the XRP Ledger is like in the middle of the consensus round for Ledger 12, we mean that a significant number of validators are in that consensus round. We say, hey, it's closed the ledger. Some of them have, some of them have. There's sort of an emergent system state. And you can sort of draw a state machine for the system as a whole, even though no node really executes that state machine. Like the Bitcoin network is looking for a block, found a block, servers are sort of updating their states, they're working on the next block, and so on. What we discovered is due to a design flaw about 10 years ago, there is an extremely improbable situation, like tens of millions to one, in which the network can get into a state as a whole where that state is stable. And so it will stay in that state. And of course, there should not be any stable states. By design, the network should always be making forward progress. In every state, there should be something that should happen next and some set of entities that should do it. And of course, it shouldn't be reliant on one, like, if Bitcoin hasn't found a block in a while, there's no node that's supposed to find the next block, right? Everybody's supposed to work on finding the next block, and someone will eventually find it. And they will, if you said, hey, the Bitcoin network is stuck, you're like, well, everybody's looking for a block. Who's supposed to find it? Well, someone is. And when they find it, they'll advance it. And since a lot of people can do that, it should not ever be stuck. Well, what happened is the XRP Ledger actually got into a state where every server was happy. Every server was in the majority consensus round, or the vast majority of them were, so there was no reason for them to leave that round. No server saw consensus, so none of them ended the round, and no server saw any reason to change its vote on any transaction. Obviously, that should never, ever be possible, but it turns out there's an incredibly weird edge case that we never foresaw. In fact, we thought we had an argument that it's impossible, but it turns out there's a flaw in that argument, again, more than 10 years ago. So we're going to, obviously, the fix is belt and suspenders. First, fix the specific scenario that got us into this state with no subsequent state. Let's just fix that specific state problem. And then let's think more broadly about what kind of safeties. I think you saw Ed, submitted a patch that detects when consensus seems stuck without having to understand why it's stuck. It never should be stuck. But if it is stuck, to sort of give it a kick. And we're just trying to think through what's the right combination of fixes. Like whenever something happens, like a person smuggles a bomb onto a plane in their shoes, well, do you search everybody's shoes or do you search everything better? Or you have to think about what is the right level of specificity for the fix and what is the combination of specific fixes and more generic fixes. And so that's kind of where we are now. But we think we understand the sequence of steps that led to the failure.
By the way, we know that on Tuesday we could pay it all back because we have the money in the bank. It's just we have no access to it. So I text Mike, I'm sorry to bother you on the weekend. Do you have a minute to chat? Within a minute, he texts back. We get on the phone with him, and Ivan and I explain the situation. And Mike says, well, guys, I like you both. I like the team. It's good for the space. How much do you need? $100 million in USDC. Mike goes, okay, no problem. Let me see what I can do. Whole conversation, 2 minutes. Yeah. 5 minutes later, we get a call from Mike's team. The team at Galaxy, absolutely amazing. So we start scrambling, the finance team, everyone's scrambling to get all the forms going. Later in the day, it turns out that we get a call. They can't confirm that the funds are real because it's a Saturday and no one at BlackRock is picking up the phone call. And they can't confirm if they're liens. And so fortunately, Lindsay Haswell, our chief legal officer, sits on the board of BlackRock's ETF. She's calling her friends at BlackRock. We get someone who can confirm the funds. Chris over at Galaxy calls up and he's like, guys, hand on heart, give me your word that you have no liens on these funds. In the meantime, after we gave our word, they asked Ivan to personally pledge his entire life, like his entire personal net worth, on the line for this loan. Not even a discussion. Signs away, pledges his entire life. We call Ivan's sisters up, goes to his house to access a computer, get some Bitcoin to liquidate, and he's liquidating his personal Bitcoin and sending it to MoonPay to make sure that we stay up and running. And finally, at 11 o'clock at night, the money comes through, $100 million. So I go to sleep at 1 o'clock in the evening. And at that point, Trump coin was, I think, $30 billion. I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I'm thinking to myself, finally, a day that I could rest. And I look at my phone and Trump coin is $70 billion. And I look at my computer. There's a Slack message from our head of product, JD. Ivan, Keith, what you did yesterday was amazing. But if we don't raise another $60 million today, we're going to run out of money by tomorrow morning. The rate that we're going, this thing is just picking up.
Just if you concretely run out of money, what does it mean?
When people try to buy crypto with MoonPay, it just says, sorry, it doesn't work. We had 750,000 registrations, right? So I'm giving you the perspective of Ivan and I raising capital, but at the same time, the operations team is working nonstop. The Melania's sort of launch happened at the same time. It essentially was the equivalent of a DDoS attack on MoonPay's servers, right? Because it was just everything coming full force. Ivan comes running over to my room in his bathrobe. And so Ivan goes, you know who I could text? Who I think could come through is Brad Garlinghouse. So Ivan texts Brad at 7 in the morning. Brad responds immediately. He says, no problem, guys, meet me at the Waldorf Astoria at 10:45 in the morning. And Ivan goes into explaining to him, yesterday Novogratz gave us $100 million. We underestimated this demand of this Trump token. And Brad goes, well, listen, same thing as Mike. I'm going to call our CFO and chief legal officer, see what we can do. Here's the deal. We want to help you, but you got to get Novo's team to approve it, which is fair. They helped us out the night before, and it was the right thing. To Galaxy's team's credit, they're like, listen, guys, if they repaper everything, you're never going to make your deadline at the end of the day. It was 5 o'clock at night. What we suggest is, why doesn't Ripple wire the money to Galaxy, and then Galaxy can wire the money to MoonPay? And at 11:58 on Sunday, another $60 million comes through. Monday comes around, and the acquirers start to pay us back from the floats in Europe, but it's still a holiday in the U.S. Tuesday comes around, like we have access to our capital again. All of the U.S. acquirers start to pay us back. And by Tuesday, I think around 2:58 in the afternoon, we paid back the entire loan. What I walked away from was, these are just two amazing individuals. To the level that, like when you said that you had Novogratz on your podcast and you spoke to him, if Mike or Brad ever needed a kidney, I should be the first call they give. I would give both of my kidneys. To put into context how big the Trump coin was and the Melania coin was and how it impacted MoonPay, over the course of a week, we onboarded 750,000 new consumers. That was my weekend, which was, I hope. And then I go back to New York for 2 days and fly here to Istanbul. Okay.